They all laughed when the skinny, shivering dog was brought onto the auction platform. His ribs showed. One of his eyes was cloudy. His fur was patchy, and his tail stayed tucked. The auctioneer barely even tried. "Nobody wants this one," he mumbled. But just as he was about to move on, a voice rose from the back. "I will take him." If this opening made your heart skip a beat, do not forget to subscribe for more real, emotional stories like this one. The crowd turned to see who had spoken. It was not a wealthy man or a ranch owner. It was a young guy, barely 20, wearing second-hand jeans and shoes that had seen too many miles. He walked forward slowly, avoiding the glares of the older buyers who were there for strong, trained breeds. Nobody could understand. Why would someone waste money on a broken, unwanted dog? The young man did not answer any of them. He just reached out his hand, and the dog, who had been shaking for hours, suddenly stopped. His ears perked. He limped forward and pressed his face into the young man's palm. No barking, no growling, just that one quiet gesture. The entire barn fell silent. "Do you know what you are buying?" someone muttered. The young man only nodded. "Yes," he said softly. "A second chance." What nobody knew was that the young man had once been exactly like that dog, abandoned, unwanted, and left to fight through life alone. And this decision, this silent bond formed in a dusty auction house, would change not only the dog's life, but everyone around them. The old truck wheezed and groaned as it pulled away from the auction yard, kicking up dust in the fading orange light. The dog lay curled up on the torn seat beside the young man, too weak to lift his head, but his eyes never left the boy's face. There was no collar, no name tag, no history, just a file that read, "Unfit for work. Reject." The boy glanced down at him and whispered, "You are not a reject. Not to me." He reached into his backpack and pulled out a faded blue cloth, an old bandana. Gently, he wrapped it around the dog's neck like a medal of honor. The dog flinched at first, then slowly relaxed. His breathing steadied, like he knew, for the first time in his life, he was safe. The drive was long and quiet. No music, just the creaking of old metal and the occasional cough from the engine. The boy lived far outside the town, in a small wooden cabin he had fixed up with his own hands. It was nothing fancy, no shiny floors, no big yard, but it had something that money could not buy: peace. When they arrived, the boy opened the truck door and waited. The dog stared for a moment, unsure. Then, with a slight push from the boy's hand, he limped down and looked around. It was quiet here. No cages, no shouting, just wind in the trees and the faint sound of birds in the distance. But just as the dog began to sniff the air, his legs gave out. He collapsed. The boy rushed to him, gently lifting his fragile body into his arms and carrying him inside. "You are all right," he whispered. "You are not going anywhere. Not now." What the boy did not know was that this moment would not just test his kindness. It would dig into something deeper, something he thought he had left buried long ago. Because hidden in this animal's silence was a past that mirrored his own. The cabin was dimly lit, warm, and quiet, nothing like the shelters the dog had known. The boy laid him gently on an old blanket near the fireplace and knelt beside him. He opened a small tin and scooped out soft food, holding it near the dog's muzzle. The dog did not eat at first. He just stared at the boy, like he was still unsure if this was real. But the boy waited. No force, no commands, just patience. And then, finally, the dog began to eat. Outside, night fell. Inside, the boy sat on the floor, watching the dog breathe, the bandana still wrapped around his neck. He whispered, more to himself than anyone, "You are the first living thing I have brought home in years." In the silence, his eyes drifted to a photo on the mantel. A woman holding a child. Both smiling, both gone. The boy looked away. He had once been in the system, moved from home to home like a piece of furniture nobody wanted. Starved, beaten, forgotten. And just like the dog, he had stopped trusting people, stopped hoping they might care. But there was something about this animal's brokenness that called out to him. It felt familiar, like looking in a mirror. Then came the knock. It was sharp, sudden, a single loud bang on the door that shattered the peace of the room. The dog lifted his head. A low, frightened whine escaped his throat. The boy stood up slowly. His face went pale. "No one knows I am here," he whispered. He reached for the door with trembling hands. Because the last time someone knocked like that, it destroyed everything he had. The door creaked open, and the boy's breath caught in his throat. Standing there was a man in a dark coat, muddy boots, and eyes that held no warmth. He looked around the small porch, then down at the boy with a quiet sneer. "You took the wrong dog," he said coldly. The boy's heart pounded. "What do you mean?" The man stepped closer, his voice low and sharp. "That dog was not just some reject. He was marked. You should not have taken him." Behind the boy, the dog growled for the first time, not loud, but deep and steady. His eyes locked on the man, and his body trembled not with fear, but something else. Memory. The man's gaze shifted to the dog, and for the briefest moment, he flinched. "Keep it away from me," he snapped. The boy blocked the doorway. "Who are you?" "I used to train dogs like him," the man said, "until one of them snapped. Killed one of my best. That one right there. He was supposed to be put down months ago." The boy's voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. Then why was he still alive? The man said nothing. Just then, the dog stood. Wobbly, slow, but he stood. And he took 3 steps forward. The boy turned, stunned. The dog's eyes never left the man's face. There was no barking, no lunging, just silence, and a stare that pierced straight through the man's lies. The man backed away. "I am warning you," he said, his voice now brittle. "Return him, or you will regret it." Then he turned and walked into the night. The boy shut the door and locked it. The dog sat down beside him. There were no words between them, but both of them understood this was not over. And whatever had happened in that man's past was not the whole story, because that dog had just stood on legs that were nearly broken to protect someone he barely knew. And the boy realized maybe he was not the only one in this cabin carrying scars. The next morning brought no peace. The sun rose quietly over the hills, casting golden light through the window, but neither the boy nor the dog slept well that night. The boy sat by the window, eyes locked on the dirt road, waiting, half expecting that man to return. But no one came. The dog, though, was changing. Not just physically, but something inside him was waking up. He followed the boy around the cabin, not limping as badly as before. He drank water without hesitation. And when the boy placed a bowl of food down again, he ate it all. Still no barking. Still no tail wag. But his eyes, they were alert now. Watching. Remembering. Later that day, the boy drove into town to pick up medicine from the local vet, hoping it would help with the infection in the dog's leg. When he came back, he found something strange. The dog was standing by the fireplace, staring at a box on the mantel. The boy slowly walked over and picked it up. It was an old wooden box, sealed with a rusted latch. He had never opened it. It had belonged to the previous owner of the cabin, a woman who died years ago. Curious, he unlatched the box and opened it. Inside were photos, hundreds of them. Dogs. Some with military tags. Some wearing harnesses. All with serious eyes and powerful builds. And then, at the bottom, a file. He opened it. The heading read, Project Redemption, Unit K9, B312 Handler, Sergeant Warren M. Hold status, classified, and there it was. A picture of his dog. Younger. Strong. Standing alert with a black vest around his chest and a tag that read, Bravo. The boy dropped the folder. The room spun. The dog looked at him, no longer just broken, no longer just rescued. He had been something. Trained. Dangerous. And now, forgotten? The boy sat down, stunned. Because he was no longer just a boy who had saved a dog. He had just adopted a soldier. The boy stared at the photo again, his hands trembling. The eyes in the picture were unmistakable, sharp, alert, ready. The same eyes that now looked back at him from across the room, though aged and dimmed. It was him. The same dog. Bravo. The boy leaned back against the wall, memories flooding his mind, not of the dog, but of his own childhood. Group homes. Foster care. Whispers about his father, a soldier who died on a mission no one would explain. He had no name, no grave, no closure. Just stories. And silence. But now, Bravo's presence in this cabin was not just coincidence. There was something buried here. He flipped through the rest of the folder, and one sentence hit him like ice down his spine. Handler missing in action. Dog refused to leave sight. Recovered with signs of trauma. Reassigned. Deemed unfit for continued service. The boy blinked hard, his heart racing. Handler? Missing in action? Could it be? He looked at Bravo, who now rested quietly by the fire, his head raised, watching him. Was he your handler? The boy whispered. Was it my father? Bravo's ears perked at the sound of the word. His body tensed. He slowly stood and walked over, resting his head on the boy's knee. Not like a pet, but like a soldier waiting for a command. Tears filled the boy's eyes. They had both lost someone. And now, somehow, they had found each other. But there was still one question burning in his mind. If Bravo had been part of something so secret, why did that man show up at the cabin? Why now? The knock had not just been random. Someone knew Bravo was alive, and someone did not want him to be. The boy could not shake the feeling that he was being watched. Over the next 2 days, strange things started to happen. A tire track appeared on the gravel road outside the cabin, fresh, though no one had visited. The mail he never received was suddenly waiting in the box, though he had no active address. And one night, just before dawn, Bravo began barking. It was not like before. This bark was sharp, trained, controlled. Like a warning. The boy grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside, heart pounding. Trees swayed in the early wind. The air was cold, silent. He scanned the woods, the beam shaking slightly in his hand. Then he saw it. A red dot flickered across the ground, vanished, then reappeared on a tree trunk. A laser. He ducked behind the porch post, breath held tight in his chest. Someone was there. He rushed back inside and locked the door. Bravo stood tall, his body stiff, his eyes alert like they remembered something terrifying. The boy pulled the curtains shut and backed away from the windows. "This is not just about you, is it?" he whispered. "They are coming for something." He pulled the file out again and flipped through the last few pages, scanning the documents until one line stopped him cold. Operation Ghost Echo, final asset located. Bravo, 312. Last known handler, Sergeant Holt. DNA match confirmed with dependent ID hashtag 05439. The boy froze. That number. It was on his old ID from the foster system. It had followed him from case to case, school to school. He was the dependent. He was Holt's son. Bravo had not just been his father's partner. He had been with him until the very end. The boy dropped to his knees. The truth hit like a freight train. His father had never abandoned him. He had died in the field, and Bravo had stayed behind to protect him. That knock on the door, it was not about reclaiming a dog. It was about erasing what was left of a secret they had kept hidden for over a decade. And now that secret was alive again, inside this cabin. The boy sat in silence, the old file spread open across the floor like a map to a forgotten war. Bravo lay beside him, unmoving but watchful, his breathing slow and steady, like he too understood the danger creeping closer. He had to act. Hiding was no longer an option. He reached under the bed and pulled out a locked metal box he had not opened in years. Inside were the last items left by the woman who once owned this cabin: an old shortwave radio, a worn map of the forest trails, and a key labeled Storm Hatch. He had always thought it was just junk, but now he saw it for what it was, an escape plan. He turned to Bravo. "We cannot stay here. They know." That night, they packed quickly: food, medicine, the file, and every shred of evidence left behind. The boy tucked the folder deep into his backpack, then lifted the rug near the fireplace. The key fit. The wooden door creaked open to reveal a hidden staircase, cold and damp, leading deep underground. As they descended, the air grew tighter. The boy's flashlight flickered against stone walls and metal shelves filled with emergency supplies. At the far end was a steel door, thick, rusted, locked. The boy took a deep breath and pushed it open. Inside was something he never expected: screens, boxes, hard drives, and photos, dozens of them, pinned to a corkboard. Photos of men in uniforms, tactical units, dogs, maps with red pins, surveillance shots of the boy, of Bravo, of the cabin. They had been watching him for months. And in the middle of it all was a document marked Final Termination Protocol, Bravo, 312, and Surviving Line. His stomach turned. They were not just trying to take Bravo back. They were trying to eliminate them both. Behind him, Bravo growled, a low, steady rumble. His body stood between the boy and the door. The soldier in him was awake now. The boy looked at the wall of photos, his fists clenched. They had erased his father, tried to erase Bravo. But they were still here, still breathing. And now, they were done running. The boy moved slowly across the underground room, his eyes scanning every document, every photo pinned to the wall. It was not just surveillance, it was obsession. Timelines, operation codes, behavioral notes on Bravo, medical records on the boy himself, files stamped with dates long before he had even arrived at the cabin. His entire life had been watched. He pulled down a folder labeled Holt, Final Transmission. Inside was a transcript, a radio call, his father's voice, calm, steady, professional, requesting immediate evac. K9 Unit Bravo holding perimeter. We have a child. Repeat, we have a child. Enemy closing in. If anyone hears this, protect the boy. The boy swallowed hard. His chest ached. He turned to Bravo, whose eyes were locked on the old speaker panel built into the far wall. The same kind of panel used in military bunkers. The boy walked to it, his fingers trembling as he pressed a button. Static. Then, click. A voice crackled through. Bravo 312, is that you? The boy froze. The voice was old, tired, but sharp. Identify yourself. He leaned in, pressing the button again. This is Holt's son. Bravo is here. We found the bunker. Who is this? There was a long pause. Then the voice returned, shaky now. I knew someone would find it. Your father. He never gave up on you. That dog. He stayed behind for a reason. There are things you do not know, son. People who will not let the past die quietly. The line cut off. Silence. The boy backed away, stunned. Bravo moved closer, pressing his nose into the boy's leg. It was not just about one dog anymore. Not just about one broken boy trying to save a broken animal. They were tied together by something far bigger. Secrets. Loyalty. A father's last mission. And now, that mission had passed to him. That night, the forest was quiet, too quiet. Even the crickets had gone still. The boy sat beside Bravo in the bunker, the dim light casting long shadows on the concrete walls. His hands gripped the edge of the file folder, knuckles white. He had replayed that radio message over and over in his mind. His father had died protecting a child, him. And the government, or whatever unit had run that operation, had tried to bury the truth. But they had not counted on Bravo surviving. And they had not counted on the boy growing into someone who would not back down. Suddenly, a sharp sound echoed through the vent shaft. Gravel shifting. Tires crunching. Footsteps. Multiple. They had come. The boy killed the lights and pressed his back to the wall. Bravo stood alert, head tilted toward the hatch above. He was not growling. He was listening. The boy reached into the survival kit, pulling out a flare gun, not for offense, but as a last line of signal. He knew the forest like the back of his hand, and he had set traps on the old trail leading to the cabin hours earlier. Then came a voice from above. Kid, we know you were down there. Send the dog up. No one gets hurt. The boy's blood ran cold. He stepped toward the metal door, voice low and clear. He is not just a dog. He is family. A beat passed. Then a laugh, dry, mocking. So was your father. Look how that turned out. That was it. The boy turned to Bravo. No leash. No command. Just a look. Bravo stepped forward, tail low, stance strong. He knew. This was not just survival anymore. This was justice. The boy opened the hatch door silently. A thin breeze slipped in. He whispered, go through the back. You know the way. And Bravo bolted, not away from the men, but around them. They were not expecting a strategy. But Bravo had been trained for this. He remembered everything. While the men closed in on the main door, Bravo circled from behind, unseen through the underbrush. The boy triggered a noise trap near the porch to distract them, and within seconds, chaos unfolded. The barking started first, then the screams. By the time the boy climbed out, 2 men were already running into the woods, dropping their gear. The others stood frozen, confused, yelling commands that made no sense in the dark. And standing on the steps of the cabin, in full view of them all, was Bravo. Mouth closed, posture firm, not attacking, just staring. And the moment they saw what was in his mouth, a torn piece of the classified folder, they panicked. Because now, the secret was exposed. Morning came with the sound of helicopters. Not the loud kind meant to announce rescue or danger, but the quiet kind. Low, sweeping, black painted with no markings. The kind that carried secrets. The boy and Bravo had made it back inside the cabin before sunrise, the folder tucked tightly into a sealed bag. But by then, the woods were crawling with men. Not police. Not animal control. Professionals. Tactical gear. Earpieces. Trained to disappear the moment anyone saw too much. But they were too late. Because the boy had already uploaded everything. Every file. Every photo. Every voice log from the bunker's hard drives. He had hacked into the town's old radio tower the night before, and wired the entire truth into a time transfer. Military forums, independent journalists, watchdog networks. 100 locations. 100 inboxes. If anything happened to him or Bravo, the story would still go public. He was no longer just a kid with a rescued dog. He was the whistleblower. And the world was about to hear his father's name for the first time in over a decade. The men tried to contain the property, but the sheriff, an old man with no love for government shadows, had already arrived. And when he saw Bravo sitting calmly by the porch, blood on his fur, but no signs of aggression, he understood something most men in suits never could. This was not a wild animal. This was a hero. Later that day, a local reporter arrived. Young, skeptical, but curious. The boy did not say much, just handed over the sealed folder. When she asked why he risked so much for one dog, he said quietly, "Because someone once risked everything for me." And that dog was the only one who remembered. Within 48 hours, the story hit every major outlet. Military dog left behind in secret operation found by handler's son. Bravo, 312, the soldier dog who kept the truth alive. And with it, footage from the cabin's outdoor camera, Bravo facing off the agents. Calm, controlled, loyal. People cried. People questioned. And most importantly, people remembered. 3 days after the story broke, the boy's world turned upside down again. News vans lined the gravel road to the cabin. People left letters, gifts, and dog toys on the front porch. Strangers called him brave. Veterans wrote in, saying Bravo reminded them of the dogs who saved their lives. Children sent drawings. Some just wrote one word over and over, hero. But with the attention came the warnings. A quiet knock. A plain envelope. No return address. Inside, a letter typed in blocky font. You have made enemies. Be smart. Walk away. Or the next time, we do not miss. The boy folded the letter, calmly fed it into the fire, and watched it burn. He was not afraid anymore. Because something had changed. This was no longer about escape or survival. It was about legacy. The boy contacted a local congresswoman known for exposing government corruption. He gave her everything. Not just the files, but the full story. From the day he saw Bravo at the auction to the moment the folder spilled its truth. She listened. Then she stood and said, "If you are ready to speak, I will stand beside you." So they did. Weeks later, standing before a panel in Washington, D.C., the boy faced a room full of suits and cameras. He had no notes. Just one photo clutched in his hand, his father, with Bravo at his side. "I did not come here for attention," he said. "I came here because the man in this photo died for something. And the dog beside him kept his promise. I am here because they would not let me forget." Silence filled the room. Even the officials who had tried to shut this down could not speak. The weight of what had been buried now sat in front of them, alive, breathing, undeniable. Outside, Bravo waited calmly on the Capitol steps, a new bandana around his neck. This one read, "Still serving." As reporters rushed forward, trying to get a quote, the boy simply said, "He is not mine. I am his." And just like that, a national movement began. Bills were proposed to protect military animals. Funding was demanded for rescue and rehab of retired canine units. And across the country, shelters reported record adoptions of older, unwanted dogs. All because of one boy and one forgotten soldier with 4 legs. Winter came early that year. Snow blanketed the cabin roof like a memory, quiet and still. The cameras were gone. The headlines had faded. But the bond that had formed between the boy and Bravo had only grown stronger. They spent their mornings walking the forest trail, Bravo slower now, but never needing a leash. He stayed close, always watching, always guarding. In town, people knew them. Some called the boy a hero. Others whispered, truth teller. But he never sought attention. He just wanted peace. One afternoon, while sorting through old boxes in the bunker, the boy found something he had missed before. A sealed envelope hidden beneath the floor panel. It was addressed in handwriting he had seen only in photos. "To my son, in case I do not come home." He sat on the cold floor, heart pounding, and opened it. Inside was a short letter. "If you are reading this, it means I did not make it. But if Bravo is with you, then I know you are not alone. He is more than a dog. He is a part of me. I trained him to protect the most precious thing I ever had, you. I am sorry I was not there to raise you. But I never stopped loving you. And if you found him, it means you have my strength. My fight. Take care of him. Take care of yourself. And never let the world tell you what you are worth. Love, Dad. The boy broke down. Not in anger. Not in pain. In release. Because for the first time in his life, he felt loved. Not by a stranger. Not by a foster parent paid to keep him alive. By blood. By bond. By memory. He turned to Bravo, who sat beside him as if he had been waiting for that moment all along. The boy leaned his forehead to the dog's, tears falling freely now. You kept your promise, he whispered. And so will I. That night, they sat on the porch together, wrapped in a blanket under the stars. No noise. No fear. Just breath and warmth and the quiet knowing that they had changed something far bigger than themselves. They had turned pain into purpose, loneliness into legacy, and a broken auction reject into a national symbol of loyalty. Bravo closed his eyes, head resting on the boy's foot. Still serving. Still home. Years passed. The world moved on, as it always does, but the story of the boy and his dog never disappeared. It became more than a headline. It became a memory people held close when they needed hope. Teachers told it in classrooms. Veterans shared it in support groups. Children whispered it to their parents when they begged to adopt an unwanted dog. But deep in the forest, far from the noise, the boy, now a man, lived quietly in the same cabin. He had rebuilt it with stronger walls, a new roof, and a small wooden sign by the gate that read, Bravo's Rest. There were more dogs now, rescues. Old, sick, forgotten by others, but not by him. He cared for each one like family. No cages. No fear. Just space to heal. Bravo's fur had turned gray, and his steps grew slow. But his eyes stayed sharp, filled with the same fierce loyalty that had once faced down armed men in the dark. He followed the man from room to room, always watching, always near. One morning, as the sun broke through the trees and lit the frost on the ground, Bravo did not rise from his bed. He lay still, the blue bandana gently rising and falling with his breath. The man knelt beside him, hand resting on his chest. No panic, no tears at first, just silence. And then, as the wind moved through the trees, Bravo let out one soft exhale and was gone. Not alone, not forgotten, just at peace. The man buried him beneath the oldest tree on the property. A small stone marked the spot. Bravo, 312 soldier. Survivor. Friend. He never left his post. That night, the man lit a candle by the grave and sat with the new dogs curled beside him. He looked up at the stars and smiled, not with sadness, but with gratitude, because Bravo had not just saved his life. He had shown him how to live it. And somewhere, in the quiet between heartbeats, a whisper seemed to echo back through the trees. Mission complete. The end.